Hello there. I just wanted to finish off going through the reporting from the 3rd of October by various doctors. There's the rest of Dr Saladi and then Dr Holt to go, so I'll crack straight into it. It's from the Telegraph. It's not directly from the transcript, but it's of transcripts, but it's lifted from what was said on the day by Sarah Napton of the Telegraph. So Dr Saladi said that by January 2017, the relationship between consultants and managers at the Countess of Chester had broken down. We know that there's this meeting, this now infamous meeting at the end of January, but more about that later, between the consultants and the and others, management. He described, that's Saladi, he described the meeting, saying it here, I preempted it. He described a meeting in that month in which Chief Executive Tony Chambers had banged the table and told the consultants that the hospital was drawing a line under the allegations, obviously about Lucy Letby. Just to interrupt there, I've heard there was a report from another doctor speaking at Thirlwall that he doesn't remember it being a very tempestuous or aggressive meeting, doesn't remember Tony Chambers doing that particularly or at all. So the different memories of how it felt like maybe their conscience was pricking them, the ones that had done wrong, and that's why they remember it in a different way. I don't know. He says, I do remember the red face of Tony Chambers, that's Dr Saladi saying that, his forceful voice, and him banging on the table. Well, he was rightfully angry at the way they'd been bullying Lucy Letby for a long time and destroying her reputation, the whispering campaign that obviously been going on since some point in 2015, probably summer of 2015, after the 3 deaths in June, I would say. That's my supposition. Dr Saladi said that in a statement to the inquiry about the forceful voice and the banging on the table. Dr Saladi said he was asked to write a letter of apology to Lucy Letby. Right. After the meeting, the consultants said that they had written further emails to the management asking for the deaths to be investigated and had considered going to the media. So that's what you do when you've found somebody virtually red-handed trying to commit murder. You go to the media. That's what you do as a doctor, as a consultant. You go to the media. None of it's believable. And it gets much, much worse, obviously, with things that are coming out yesterday. I'm quite behind with what's going on. I'm following it on Twitter, but I'm behind with reading about it in depth. Following on here, Dr Saladi, this is from the 3rd of October. Dr Saladi said he had not told an inquest that Lucy Letby may have been responsible for the death of child A because he was never asked. So you've got to be asked now. When you suspect murder or suspect somebody's responsible, and there's an inquest with a coroner, and they didn't ask me. None of it's stacking up, is it? With the way these doctors have behaved, it's just appalling, isn't it? In every possible way. Nicholas de la Poa, KC, counsel for the inquiry, pointed out that by the time of the inquest in the autumn of 2016, consultants had already raised concerns about Lucy Letby and had discussed the possibility of air embolism. You'll notice this as a trend, as people are noticing it all over Twitter, people are saying it. These barristers, these KCs, are trying to pull the witnesses back into the story, into the murder story, the fake serial killer story, at every opportunity. As soon as they veer towards anything which might be to do with the actual status of those children that were in terms of their health, how precarious it was and what the issues were there, or about the Pseudomonas aeruginosa, the KCs, the barristers want to get them off that topic, because that's obviously the agenda of the Thirlwall, is not to throw any shade on the criminal justice system and what it's done, the appalling crime that it's committed and that has been committed by the police and all the people responsible, all those doctors and Evans. So yeah, Where was I? Yet none of the consultants told the coroner that there were suspicions that a member of staff was deliberately harming babies. Oh no, because they kept it to themselves. Why? Why? It's just absurd. It should, anyway, I won't keep interrupting it. Dr. Saladi said he was, quote, stressed and had been told to keep his answers brief. Also, it's stress now that tells you that you're not going to inform a coroner that you're suspecting murder. Stress stops it, okay. It is probably in retrospect, a mistake, but only probably, that's what he says, only probably. Probably in retrospect, a mistake for me not to share my concerns. You think so? I think it might be a mistake? Because not that any of it happened, not that there are any crimes, of course, but the fact that they've got to say this stuff now because they never really fully believed that there was these crimes going on. It was all about bullying and pushing somebody out of the unit. And then they just kept pushing it further and further and further because Lucy Letby brought the grievance and won the grievance, and they were told to apologise. They were shamed, and you got the narcissistic rage coming back into the picture then. But so they have to fill in and say, oh God, if I was in my right mind, maybe it would have been an idea to mention it to the coroner. But they didn't want to do it then, so they both wanted to have the rumour mill going crazy about it in order to push Lucy out, which is what they achieved in July 2016. But they didn't want to make it as official as going to the coroner about it, or going to the police about it, indeed, in 2016. Because they didn't really want to do it, because they were happy to leave it. If they'd forced her out, if they'd achieved their aims in their bullying, which they had, until the grievance was brought, and Lucy was coming back in spring of 2017, that would have been good enough for them. They would have let all their ideas of, or the rumours, or their gossip, and that's what it is, this hideous, vicious gossip, would have all gone away. Wouldn't have mentioned it. They would have joked about it. These people are quite sinister, actually, aren't they? I mean, let's face it, they're quite sinister, these so-called doctors. All of them that are behaving in this way. Would you want to work with them? Would you expect any other nurse to work with them? I don't think anyone should work with them. I think they should be ostracised. I think they should be driven out of that profession. They should be ostracised. Everyone involved in that. Nurses should say, well, I'm not working with these individuals. And when it is overturned, when Lucy Letby is released, and which she will be, and she can return to her family, and then they begin to investigate fully what actually happened here, that's the end for these consultants. I hope, if there's any justice in the world, that's the end of their careers. It should be, at the very least. I personally think for certain of them, like Breary and Jayaram, I think they should be, what they could convict them for, I don't know, but I think they should be serving some kind of sentence at the end of this. Obviously Evans as well, and all those ridiculous idiots in the Cheshire Police, they should all be sacked immediately, lose their pensions, and there's got to be accountability for this. It's a crime what they've committed in conjunction with each other, anyway. So he's stressed, and it's only probably a mistake that he didn't mention it to the coroner. Yeah, just probably. Still not sure now it's a mistake. What are these people? I don't know what they are. Would you want them treating you? Somebody thinks somebody's murdering someone, and they won't say it to a coroner. And years down the line, he said, well, it's probably a mistake. I didn't say anything. It would have been better to say it and have a proper full inquest then, and then you would have cut through this nonsense about there being crimes, because it would have been you wouldn't have got that idiot Evans involved, that monster Evans. You would have had proper people investigating it, and then establishing that there obviously were no crimes here, and they might have saved some of the babies' lives further down the line in terms of saying that babies of high acuity shouldn't be sent to Cancer Chester Hospital. That's how it would have saved lives. He says here, I think that was probably my first appearance at an inquest, and I was stressed. And the advice we got from the solicitors, so it's like these solicitors, these legal eagles surrounding them, that apparently subordinate their conscience. So he just doesn't say anything about his suspicions, same as Jayaram doesn't say anything for 13 months about catching someone virtually red-handed attempting to murder a baby. And here the excuses are, it's the solicitors saying, don't answer what you think was asked and keep it brief and don't speculate. That's what Dr. Saladi said. The solicitors said to him, don't answer what you think was asked, keep it brief. It's all excuse making. It's all pathetic excuse making. And the flip side of this kind of attitude of these people is their bullying attitude, is their mobbing attitude, the fact they'll all get together and victimise someone, drive them out of their profession, they're a very good nurse, and be happy enough to see them put in prison for the rest of their lives. What kind of creatures are these, really? I want to get through this today if I can. Dr. Saladi said he would carry the guilt, in quotes, of not being able to prevent the baby deaths at the Countess of Chester for the rest of his life. What performative play acting that is. Because he's performing the idea that there were murders there and he could have stopped them, rather than him going to the management and saying, you're running a unit here which is dangerous, which is what Alison Timmis attempted to do when she sent that email in December 2015. She warned the management saying, you're running a dangerous unit here in which children will die. And that's what happened, and have been, and nobody's listening to us, and it's chaotic and it's unsafe. But here, he's doing this storytelling thing about carrying the guilt. But if you remember what he just said a minute ago, he just said it was only probably a mistake that he didn't mention to the coroner that he was suspicious that it was deliberate harm of this baby. So he's not even sure now, and yet he's still carrying the guilt now. None of it's believable. These people aren't believable. And why they're not believable is because none of the story that they've concocted and this framing that they've concocted is based on any fact. It's all fiction. So they can't be believable. They can't be believable now. They can't be believable in what they're saying they felt like then and what they did and didn't do then, because they're duplicitous. They're duplicitous and they're vicious and they're responsible for destroying someone's life. And they're responsible for all those parents who have lost babies because of suboptimal care and medical mismanagement and medical, there was at the time, there were a number of families at the time being represented by a solicitor, as we know, in February 2017, before the police got involved, all about to go for medical negligence cases against some of the doctors here and the hospital as a whole. But they were all put on ice when the police came in, which suited the hospital, in the end suited the trust, didn't they? Didn't have to pay out millions and millions of pounds, follow the money again. But yeah, he's going to carry the guilt, even though he's still not sure whether he should have said something to coroner, so it's utterly unbelievable. In a closing statement, he told the parents that he was, quote, profoundly sorry. He doesn't know what he's sorry for, because it's all made up. The idea of the murder is all made up, so what is he sorry for? Lying then? Failing then? Who is he sorry really to? None of it's real. None of it. These people aren't like real people. They're actors. And they're acting now. They're acting at the Thirlwall inquiry. I think there's one or two of them that begin to show a little bit of decency in terms of... I'll mention that at the end of this video. In terms of reality of what was going on for those children there and how compromised their health was, particularly in that environment. He said, Saladi, I want to apologise to all the parents for not being able to prevent the deaths and the harm done. But it's meaningless. It's meaningless what he's saying. Because he's not in touch, or not explicitly in touch with the reality that I suspect he knows, that it was down to that unit. And earlier on in his testimony, he's talking about, isn't he? I don't know if you remember from the other video when I was reading it through. He's talking about Pseudomonas aeruginosa and the tabs. So he knows that, and he's got these two tracks going on in his mind, where he's got to pretend to say sorry, I didn't stop the murderer, where he's giving evidence before about his first assumption about it, and because he's come from another country, and he's quite junior there in that sense, and in that new environment, he's joined the gang, basically, isn't he? He's joined the gang of them, and that's why he ends up having to apologise and he's part of the gang of 7, as Gibbs actually says in one of his interviews. He says that Lucy Letby thought it was a gang of 4, but it was a gang of 7, so Dr Saladi's one of them. And he's gone with his doctor friends and joined in with the mobbing, joined in with the bullying campaign and the scapegoating. So anything he says here is unreal. None of these apologies are real, because he's not apologising for the thing that actually happened, which was being part of a catastrophically dangerous unit for those babies. So he's not apologising for that, is he? He says, it's a guilty feeling I carry, and I think I'll carry for the rest of my life. I'm profoundly sorry for that. I wonder if there's some sense there in the subtext that he knows what he's actually part of, which is lying to the parents, lying to the Thirlwall inquiry, lying in terms of the court cases that were, lying to the police, lying to everyone, lying to the public, to being part of destroying Lucy Letby's career and then destroying her life thereafter, not standing up for the truth. That you had a sense he intimated the sense that he was thinking, oh God. He said a number of things, this Dr Saladi. He said, well, you shouldn't be blamed just for the fact you're there, if there are these deaths, and that sometimes there's a kind of spike in deaths, and it can happen that the same person's there. And he was focusing on very much trying to find out what was the reason for these deaths, and his main go-to was infection and the Pseudomonas. He literally mentions that, and the TAPs, he mentions them. But he can't be, there's no courage here, so he's got to stick with the story that they're so entrenched with the serial killer story, so they've bought into, they've bought into it, they've constructed it. They know that once it's turned round, they're going to look, all of them involved are going to look like what they are: bullying, nasty, vile cowards that ganged up to destroy someone. That's what they're going to look like. Now we move to the last doctor that was giving evidence on the 3rd, called Dr Holt, on the 3rd of October. She says some pretty unusual things as well. Dr Susie Holt, her name is. And she told the inquiry that she regretted not going to the police in June 2016 after learning of a string of deaths on the unit. She learned of a string of deaths on the unit? Well, which string of that? I keep bringing it up. Which string? Because the preponderance of the deaths on the unit were not ascribed to Lucy Letby anyway, didn't form part of the charge sheet. So 12 that didn't form part of that charge sheet, possibly more, because they're miscoding some deaths as stillbirths. We still don't know how many they did that with, especially in the year of 2015, when there's a relatively high amount of stillbirths. So of course she's not going to be specific about that. If she was specific about it, she'd say, well, all the ones that Breary had said that were suspicious, I learnt about the string of those, as opposed to all the deaths there. I didn't want to go against him, of course. I didn't want to go against the thrust of what was happening, the campaign of bullying. So I joined in. Dr Holt joined in and went with it. Dr Holt started working as a consultant in the hospital in March 2016, so she wasn't there in 2015. So she's got even less reason. But of course she's starting this job and she wants to suck up to people like Breary and Jayara, and probably Breary specifically because he's the lead, he's the neonatal lead. And she was unaware initially that there'd been several unexplained deaths and collapses. But she soon gets on board. She told the inquiry that she'd been copied into an email from Dr Drs Saladi, that was the last doctor we were talking about, calling for a police investigation. If I could change one thing in my life, she says, another bit, or dramatising language, emotional dramatising language coming out. If I could change one thing in my life, I would have called the police that day, she said in a statement to the inquiry. Virtue signalling, oh, I'm a good person. I should have done it that day to make sure the murderer was caught. Because she's saying I would have done it in June 2016. So at the end of June 2016, Lucy Letby's final shift is on the 30th of 29th or 30th of June, I think. They have a meeting on the 29th of June, these bastards. Lucy Letby's final shift's on the 30th, and then she goes to the admin job thereafter, and then in September she brings of 2016, she brings the grievance process, institutes the grievance, not institutes, what do you call it? She starts the grievance process. There's so much going on, my head's spinning really, because I can't keep up with it all. I've got to catch up on the reading with it, but I wanted to finish this bit off here from last week. So yeah, she's backfilling again with storytelling and emotionality and just this pumping up thing. Oh, I'll never get over it. It's this. I should have done it then. I should have been the one to be brave enough. Just at this point when she says this, just to remind you, she's saying I should have done that in June 2016. She's only been there a few months. Her new colleague, Jayaram, has known since back in February that he's literally seen somebody trying to commit murder and saying nothing to her. So she shouldn't be castigating herself, should she? It's just all rubbish. I mean, these people are just talking crap, and none of it's believable. None of it's believable. I don't think they believe Lucy Letby's a murderer now, but they're stuck. They're stuck with it because of what they've done, and that's the level of their cowardice. That's the level of their cowardice. Same with Evans. Same with the police. Same with the CPS. Same with the prosecution. Same with the whole damn system. Same with Thirlwall. I don't think they believe Lucy Letby's. I don't think they believe it. For them, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't be anything on their conscience that they don't believe it. It was done. It was achieved. The conviction, the charges were brought, the convictions, the appeal was rejected. That's good enough for them. And that's the difference between the type of people that run those systems and are successful in those systems. That is good enough for them. And they were happy to have it stand. And certainly somebody like Breary and Jayaram are happy to have it stand. It's going to destroy their, as it should do, their so-called reputations, which I think should be in tatters already. But who would want to work with them after this? Who would employ Jayaram for a television gig after this, when it's shown what he actually has done and been part of? Who would want to work with Breary in a hospital as a nurse or any other doctor? And wait till the parents actually do want the full knowledge of what has happened there and who caused those deaths, who was implicated in them, which doctors and which issues in that hospital and in that trust overall made that such an unsafe setting that made it highly likely that their children would die in that setting, as Alison Timmis herself said would happen and did happen. I don't know if she's going to be called. She should be called. So, yeah, I'll go on with Dr. Holt. Dr. Holt said she'd seen a mortality report in April 2016, so she's only been there a month, which had investigated deaths at the Countess of Chester. She says, your first thought are always about medical causes because that's my training, she said. She goes on to say, they thought about superbugs and common medications and side effects, or they just thought about them. What did they do about them? What did they really do about them? How hard did they think about them? How hard did they really try to push away the idea of sepsis and the pathogens on the units and the plumbing and the sewage and the hospital wastewater? Did they really think that hard about them? Did they? While taking on more and more, overloading that unit and with drastically understaffed, underskilled unit with more and more high acuity babies, twins and triplets. That's how hard they thought about it. They didn't do anything about the situation. They didn't listen to Alison Timmis and restructure. And what they should have done is what they should have done. If they were decent people, these doctors, instead of trying to find somebody to blame, instead of trying to find, in a vicious way, a scapegoat, they should have said to the management, we're failing here, we're failing these children, we know it's not safe, we've got to go down to a level 1 now. They should have asked to do it. They should have asked to do it at some point in 2015, obviously. Dr. Rachel Langdale KC said at the Thirlwall inquiry, and it investigated and eliminated them, i.e. superbugs. See how the KCs come in there to try to push away the idea that there was a problem with sepsis there and superbugs. And then Dr. Holt said, and there's a bit of honesty here, where she says, there's tiny little scintillas of honesty come through. Difficult to eliminate them, but investigated them, and then thought about ways and means of modifying the sort of guidance going forward, the treatment plans, etc. It's a bit kind of woolly, that statement, isn't it? She's kind of being honest when she says it's difficult to eliminate them, because she knew. Oh, well, when did she start? April 2016, I don't know when. We know that Pseudomonas aeruginosa was found and put into the risk report in May 2015. And I've heard that it was still there in terms of being checked and being found, and they've got the cultures of it and grew it in the laboratory into the spring of 2016. Whether it was still there formally and on that risk register when she had started, Dr. Holt, in March, I don't know. It probably was. But she does this kind of wishy-washy stuff here about, modifying guidance, but not looking at anything fundamental, which they obviously didn't. But it would be very soon before and then they would drop down to a level 1 anyway. Okay, next bit. A spike in deaths at the Countess of Chester was, quote, inevitable because of the acuity and busyness in the unit, managers told consultants. Well, see, that's where the managers are failing, obviously, because they knew they weren't able to handle that level of busyness and acuity with the staff levels they had, with the smallness, the oldness of the unit, how close the cots were together, disastrous issues with the plumbing and the pathogens that would ensue thereby. So that's I think this is going to be a case eventually of corporate manslaughter by that trust, and then individual cases of medical negligence by certain individual doctors. There won't be any nurses brought here in these medical negligence cases. It'll all be the doctors, and it will be the management and the trust. That's what's going to happen long term, and that was probably what was going to happen when in early 2017, where we've got this local solicitor representing, as it said at the time in a newspaper article, several of the families, so that could have been quite a number of them, that then get told that by the police, the stupid police, that they're crimes and not medical negligence. But it was all being geared up for medical negligence cases. The inquiry heard how management held a meeting in July 2016 and showed a graph linking the rise in mortality to patient numbers. Also, they've got an awareness that they're taking too many, so you've got this constant awareness of the problems there, but they choose a certain narrative, these doctors, which will support them the best and exorcise the malice that's in them, quite frankly, the malice to find somebody to blame. And it won't be one of their own number. It won't be another doctor, will it? That's the last thing it will be. They know that they're looking bad, so they've got to push out all that feeling onto someone else. Dr. Holt said, I remember the messages we were being given, which I couldn't corroborate. Not sure what that means. It says here, we were being told the rise of acuity and busyness on the unit, that perhaps an increased number of deaths was inevitable. Well, and when Dr. McLachlan did some of those comparators to other trusts in the area, ones like the Sherwood Trust, and then there's the Blackpool one, you have got different years where there are these spikes for different reasons. People talked some time ago about the closure of some neonatal units in North Wales, possibly affecting the numbers of high acuity babies that ended up being sent to Countess of Chester Hospital in 2015 and 2016, that was another factor that was going on. Dr. Holt goes on to say, I'm not sure what role statistics have to play in this situation. the death of each and every baby needed to be scrutinised to understand whether they were sudden and whether they were expected. Well, there was a certain amount of scrutiny, and they were called post-mortems, weren't they? There were post-mortems in all but one of the cases, and the one where there wasn't a post-mortem, it was because one of the doctors, I can't remember the name of the doctor, advised or persuaded almost one of the parents not to have the post-mortem, that it was unnecessary, told them it was unnecessary. But all the other ones found natural causes for various reasons. As we're now finding out more and more evidence of that outside the post-mortems, even in terms of what some of the doctors realised was the precarious nature of those babies' situations in terms of all the health challenges they faced then. Dr. McCormack saying some true things about this, for example, in relation to Baby C, I think. So there is some truth coming out from one or two of these doctors, probably on the edges of this. I think he's an obstetrician, so he's probably not part of this gang of 7. Anyway, Dr. Holt goes on to say, I think the individual patients were what was important. Well, obviously, and the matters around what happened to each of them rather than arbitrary statistics like number of days between deaths. Well, exactly, you're saying all this, but then you've got Breary there and getting everybody to send him, to tell him about quote-unquote collapses and deaths just when Lucy Letby's around, isn't it? Not doing it when she's not around. That's the dossier and document that he's building, that he ends up giving to the police in 2017. They never focus on anyone else. You know, he does a sort of initial prototype roster, Breary does, with the doctors on it, and then the next time, whether it's Alison Kelly or Karen Rees, I can't remember which one, next time she sees that roster chart, it's just the nurses. He's got rid of all the doctors, Breary has. So you can just see it focusing down, and it's just what they were up to. The last bit of this is, later in the inquiry, she added, Dr. Holt, it's really important that we did consider all factors, so it wasn't to be instantly dismissed. Don't know what she's talking about there. It did indeed need thought and consideration. It's a bit woolly, isn't it? She's not actually saying anyway, in this reporting, there's nothing tangible what she's saying here. It's all woolly, isn't it? It's really important. Well, what's really important? It's really important that we considered all factors. About what? About who? So it wasn't to be instantly dismissed. What wasn't to be dismissed? It did need thought. What did need thought? And consideration. What? Because if that had been a contributing factor, you would want to take steps to remediate that. What? In that whole statement, there's nothing specific about what she's talking about. I know perhaps it's been lifted out of context, but God knows what that means. There's nothing hard you can grab onto there, is it? It's just kind of woolly language to sound. She goes on to say, Dr. Holt said that she told managers in June 2016 that she would not want her friends treated at the Countess of Chester while Lucy Letby was still working in the unit. God, she's only been there a couple of months, and she's so much on board that she's telling her friends, we've got this nurse here that my colleagues that I've just joined a couple of months ago saying is the person that's responsible. And she's taken it fully on board in a couple of months without knowing anything about the situation from before, only known Lucy Letby a tiny amount of time, and telling her friends not to go there when Lucy Letby's on there. What a disgusting person. These are weak people, these are weak, and that's what bullies are. They're cowardly and they're weak. And that's what all these people are, and that's what we're going to find. That's what we're seeing in Thirlwall, despite Thirlwall's obvious intentions to ratify the ridiculous court cases and the ridiculous convictions, the evil convictions, the evil crime of that facade of that, what's the word? I can't think of words. A disaster, nothing to do with justice. I'm trying to think of words, I can't think of them. It's a catastrophe. So she said, I wouldn't want my friends treated. She's only been there a couple of months and she's fully on board with the bullying team, isn't she? This Dr. Holt. Sucking up to Breary, sucking up to Jairam. She says, I was really concerned and wouldn't have wanted that care for my friends. Well, what care, though? Do you really mean the Countess of Chester low level of care with all the mistakes and all the failures by the doctors and the lack of senior cover and the 2 consultant ward rounds a week instead of 2 a day? Is that the care that you really mean, that you should say, that you should talk about, but you want to blame it all on one nurse? This is utter deplorable behaviour, deplorable character, this individual, Dr. Holt, as are they all that took part in it. She said it didn't feel safe with the current uninvestigated concerns. Back to the feelings. It's the feelings and the uncomfortableness. No evidence of incompetency, no evidence, nobody's seen anything, nobody's done anything. It's pure witch hunting of the old days. I just feel bad about this person. There's something dark about them. I thought I saw a funny shadow. It's just mystical type thinking, magical thinking. Magical thinking, the opposite of what these people are supposed to be. Rational, scientific people that deal with evidence. They've gone into full witch hunting mode, all of them. And I submit, or I would say that they're enjoying it at some level. They enjoy the power of it. They enjoy the ability to focus that viciousness, to expel it, to get it out of themselves onto this one person. There's a kind of relish in it, I think. There's a relish in it. We get little hints of that where we hear that Jairam would make comments in a lunch queue, in a bloody lunch, in the canteen about an angel of death. That's how much he cared. That's how much he cared about the babies. That he's making it into a thing of cheap gossip and office gossip. Not office. Workplace gossip. That's how much he cared, that he can turn it into that. This bastard. Oh, they all are. They are horrible people. These horrible people. There's something missing in them. They've all got fucking personality disorders, a lot of these bastards. They've got to have, haven't they? There's something wrong with the profession of... There's too many of them. I won't go into the other subject about... I won't go there, anyway. She goes on to say, we had some medical explanation, in part, for some of the deaths. She's not really talking about which deaths are you talking about, just the ones that have been cherry-picked. But as a cohort, when you looked at it all together, there was something happening, and we were aware of this uncomfortable association with one particular team member, only because you created it. You created it about a subset of deaths. You chose that. What about the other 12 deaths, possibly more? That has been acknowledged that at least 4 of them were from sepsis. When you've got Pseudomonas on the unit there, all through that period. These aren't scientifically... you wouldn't want these doctors anywhere near you, would you? For anything. You wouldn't want them treating your goldfish, would you? Any of these people, I wouldn't. The way there's no logic in their thinking, is there? They're just kind of like swayed, and the characters aren't there, to do the right thing. Not now, not then. And because they didn't do the right thing then, they've got to carry on doing the wrong thing now, and showing their cowardice in front of the world, and pretending to be sorry for what's happened. And even though they don't even know what they're sorry for, they kind of do know and should know what they're sorry for, but they won't admit that because it'll implicate themselves. She says here, this is Dr. Holt, what human wants to hurt any living creature? So it's all emotive language again. It's all this cheap, apparent virtue signalling from these twits. And then hurt a defenceless baby to hurt the families. It's abhorrent in society. It's abhorrent in society to think people intentionally inflicting harm. So there's all this kind of pabulum, there's all this broad statements about virtue, and isn't it awful, isn't it terrible to be a murderer? Yeah, it is terrible to be a murderer. It's so bad to be a murderer. It's so bad that at the time you don't say anything to anybody about it. You don't say anything to the coroner. You feel somebody's murdering, so you don't say anything to the coroner, and you witness In Jayaram's mind, you witness something, a virtual attempted murder taking place, and you don't say anything. That's how terrible it is. That's how badly they were affected, that they said nothing to any official source, nothing to the coroner. So it's all rubbish. I'm not mocking the reality that if you had seen those things, but it's the fact that it doesn't exist. It's a phantasm. It's a phantasm. And it's something in their minds that they've got together, and they've mobbed up, and she's just joined there a couple of months before Lucy Letby's told to leave the unit, taken away from the job she loves. And they all gang up and mob up and get on board. Simple as that. Simple as that. Oh, I'll do the last two bits. I've had enough of this Dr. Holt already. Just what an appalling individual. Just a load of empty rubbish. Dr. Holt told the inquiry she was, quote, devastated to be asked to write a letter of apology to Lucy Letby after the nurse won a grievance in January 2017. Oh, so she thought she was going to get away with doing the bullying, does she? She's devastated, not about the deaths on that unit. She's devastated that she has to write an apology. Can you hear the ego coming through? Can we get a sense of narcissistic wounding by the fact that she's been called out as a bully, which is obviously what she is? She's been there 2 months and she's already telling her friends that there's a nurse here killing babies and there's no evidence of it. And I wouldn't come to this hospital because of this nurse death, as these vile junior doctors called her. These bullies, these thugs in white coats. So she's devastated, not about what's happening in the unit, but she's devastated because she has to write a letter of apology. She's been called out and caught out as a bully. She said, I didn't feel it was appropriate. It was not appropriate, no. I didn't feel I had a choice. And I'm quite embarrassed that we ever wrote the letter and sent it. It's all about them, isn't it? It's all about their finer feelings and how they've been wounded by being caught out bullying and caught out being vile to somebody that they were working with, and that they'd hounded and that they'd destroyed their career and pushed them out of the unit. It devastates them. Sorry about I've got a cold. It devastates them. As she says here, she's literally saying it. And embarrasses them and devastates them, and that's the reason for the rage. And this is Dr. Holt slipping it out now. And think of that, what she's saying there, the devastation and the embarrassment. Think of Breary and think of Jayaram and magnify that devastation and embarrassment and the anger, the rage about 1,000 times in their positions who've been on that hospital. And Jayaram with his position as a TV doctor, his reputation. These people think they're mini gods. So imagine what Dr. Holt's saying here, times it by 100 times for Breary and Jayaram and Gibbs, and probably Dr. B, whoever she was. She said, I don't know how it makes the family feel to see and have read that. I think it's awful that they were held accountable for their vicious treatment and bullying. Awful. These people are so mixed up emotionally. They're so unreal emotionally. Their characters are so unreal in terms of what was going on there and what they're actually responsible for. It's all about their emotions, about being called to account here, isn't it? That's what it's about. This is showing the thinness and the weakness of their character, how distorted it is, how... What does she go on to? I can't stand much anymore of her. There's a bit she says I wanted to get in. Dr. Holt said that many of the nurses continued to support Lucy Letby despite the allegations, and she was invited to a Christmas party in December 2016 even though she was still banned from the unit. What a despicable thing. And they didn't even want her to come to a Christmas party. What evil, vile, bullying bastards. Dr. Holt says, there was so much swirling. Can you hear all the emotional language lined in? So much swirling, she says, Dr. Holt. What swirling? I tell you what's not swirling. Evidence. Evidence of Lucy Letby doing anything wrong. Evidence of her being incompetent in any way, of doing anything accidentally wrong. No evidence of her doing anything deliberately wrong. Nothing. So what is swirling? It's all the stuff in these consultants and doctors' heads, and their desire to crush someone, to destroy them, especially once they're held to account and made to apologise. Then they really want to go nuclear, and they do. We now know that she has been tested in a court of law. Yeah, what the fuck does that mean? And found guilty. Well, that's meaningless. It's crap. Bollocks to that fucking court of law. It's a piece of shit, isn't it? It's a piece of absolute fucking shit. But at the time, we were still dealing with uncertainty. Well, you're never going to be certain about it because none of it happened, Dr. Holt. Can this possibly be true? Dr. Holt's sort of thinking back. Oh, God, can it be true? See how they dramatise themselves. Oh, could it be true? Well, it was true enough for her to say that she told friends not to go there. That was in her mind. It was an idée fixe for them all. There was blood in the water. They wanted this Lucy Letby out. They achieved it. And Lucy Letby had the temerity to try to defend herself, and she defended herself very well. And we've had this statement come out, which I think I might do a video about. It's quite painful and difficult read, as people have said. And it's a brilliant statement, and it really is very clear about what's going on there. It's very, very powerful. I don't think the jury would have seen it, and that's another failure of this court of law that Dr. Holt is holding up as some bastion of truth, whereas it's a den of iniquity and den of lies and fraud and stupidity and idiots with fucking wigs on. She carries on, Holt. It was a pretty astonishing time. All these words, these magnifying words. Oh, it's astonishing, but pretty astonishing. We all felt that working with our board, that's the management, was going to be better than ending up on gardening leave, which felt like it was the insinuation from that January meeting. So they're saying that, the reason they didn't go to the police is until much later, was that they were worried for their jobs. Again, that's how much they cared about their babies. If they really believed there were murders, they put their jobs above the lives of those babies, didn't they? They're telling you it. They're telling you that. They put their jobs and their income above, which I can well imagine. I'm sorry to say, with what's happened in the last 4 years, that seems to be the default. It don't take much to put something above the lives of patients, is all I'm saying, for doctors per se, with very, 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 very few exceptions. And they're the exceptions that make the rule. And that's the kind of profession that we've got now, unfortunately. Overall, so that just is the case. We've seen it. They've proved it. In these last years. I won't expand on that, otherwise they'll take this video down. So she's saying gardening leave, otherwise, they'll be reported to the GMC and they might lose the license to practice or get bullying. So, in other words, we've got to capitulate and let the murderer go, as it were, not go to the police, or it'll affect my career. They're telling you, they're absolutely showing and telling you what their characters and what their priorities are, their career above the lives of babies, which in effect, in reality, it was anyway, for those doctors, because they knew that it was a dangerous unit, not because of a murderer, but because of the failures of the unit in all the ways that we've talked about again and again and again. And again, it was their careers and their self-image above the lives of those babies. That's what matters to them most of all, is priority 1, 2 and 3 for them, above the lives of those babies. Absolutely. It's them above everything else, these doctors. All of them that I can see, all of them that are involved in this. She said that if we didn't toe the line, we wouldn't be remaining in our jobs. Exactly, it's just about the job. So yeah, we can have this. Well, we'll keep quiet about the quote unquote serial killer, or we'll lose our job, and that's what we'll do. That tells you about their conscience, doesn't it? It's not there. But I think it tells you something else, that they didn't really believe that there were crimes happening, that they were in a war, an ego war, that they felt they'd been, their egos had been smashed by like she said, she gives it away. I was devastated by having to apologise. It's that they're devastated about. It's not the babies dying. It's not the the mortality rate. It's the signing of the apology letter and knowing that Lucy Letby's coming back. And they've been shamed and revealed as what they are, a bunch of nasty, nasty pieces of work, utterly unprofessional people. I'll finish this off tonight. It's important to remember at this point, she says, Dr. Holt, that there was already a talk of her returning to the neonatal unit. So there was a degree of thinking, actually, we need to keep our voice and not be silenced. So what does that mean? Yeah, well, exactly. It just reinforces it. Because she's coming back, we've got to say something. She says it again. She gives it away, 100% gives it away. We've got to keep our voice. Now we've got to push for the police because she's coming back. So the subtext of that is, had she not been returned to the unit, it's over. Won't be talking about it again. Won't be talking about the deaths again. The suspicions. Let it all go. No police, no Evans, no court case, no charges, no convictions, nothing. That's how much they really believed in it. Because the operative thing that's happening here, the fulcrum position, is Lucy coming back. Even if she'd won the grievance and Lucy said, well, I'm leaving that bloody trust, it's fucking full of nutters, which it is. Not talking about her nurse colleagues, but these doctors, dangerous lion's den it was for Lucy, a lion's den. Had she said, I'm happy to have won my grievance, I'm going to leave, I'll go somewhere else, this is awful, I've got to get out of here, get out of Dodge. Never have heard of this case, never have heard of it. That's why you can tell these doctors are trapped in that fake story now. And they give it away, they're trapped in it. There's the last bit, see if I can get through it before an hour. Because I think I only got an hour. Dr. Holt said she was angry about the way the neonatal unit was described in the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health report in 2016. She's angry about that. Right? And she's only been at this hospital for a few months. And you've got the RCPCH coming and doing a full overview and looking at all the problems there, listing them, itemising them, all the issues that create a danger for their patients, which is meant to be their main priority. And she's angry because, again, like she's devastated at being Dr. Holt's devastated at being asked to apologise for her bullying. She's now angry at the Royal College of Paediatric and Child Health people for spotting all the problems. They hate any kind of criticism, don't they? To the point that they'll destroy someone's life. That's how much they hate the criticism. That's how entrenched their egos are, how monstrous their egos are. They'll destroy someone's life without batting an eyelid. But it's coming to bite them. It's coming to bite them in the future. The report described multiple failings in the unit. This is Sarah Napton reporting, highlighting understaffing, gaps in rotas, poor decision-making, delays in seeking advice, delays in taking babies to regional hospitals, i.e. the level 3 units. They keep them there, they shouldn't be there. They should never have gone there in the first place. Dr. Holt said, quote, I'm angry that we were represented in that way because I don't think it's a fair reflection on the service that we were providing. Right. So why are all the babies dying then? So what's happening then? So why is Alison Timmis saying it's chaos? She's a kind of Johnny-come-lately in this period of time. Comes in March 2016. Wasn't there in 2015 at all. And now is trying to rewrite history and say everything was great there. In the same way that all these doctors have lied about all the babies being in stable and good condition. She's doing it about the trust as a whole and about the unit as a whole. Everything was perfect. Everyone else is wrong. Just them getting a criticism is the thing she can't take. She's angry about the criticisms. She should want the criticisms because it's the purpose of them is to give a better service to those patients so that they're less likely to die. They're less likely to be harmed by your medical malpractice and your failings. But it makes her angry instead. So we can see where this person's coming from. Earlier, she said, we were providing an amazing service to paediatric patients and training the next generation of doctors, she said. These people are in cloud cuckoo land. You've got all these things, catalogue of mistakes and errors and failures across all that period of time that we're seeing being talked about in great detail now. And she describes that as an amazing service. What Dr. Alison Timmis said at the end of 2015 was chaos unsafe unit, children are going to die. This Dr. Holt, who joins 4 months after that email was written, and there have been more deaths, 3 in January 2016, none apply to Lucy Letby, and she says it's an amazing service, and there's nothing really wrong. So these people are bizarre, dangerous and bizarre people. Just going to finish this here. Asked why she hadn't gone to the police earlier, she said, quote, "I don't know why we didn't." Oh, I don't know why we didn't. "It is a huge regret. I wish I had done something back in 2016. Storytelling. Fake emotion, fake presentation of self, utter fake presentation of self." And this line stands out to me. She's asked, why don't you go to the police about what you thought were murders? And her first answer is this. "Oh, I don't know why we didn't. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Search me. I don't know." It's ridiculous. It's absurd. But they have to be revealed as what they are, because everything they've done is based on lies. So it has to come out, and is coming out. The last little bit. Dr. Holt said she had not referred the issue with the local authority designated offer because the evidence was circumstantial. In other words, there was no evidence. That's why she hadn't referred anything, because she had nothing. They never had anything. That's why Breary goes to Alison Kelly and Karen Rees and the nurse managers, and they say, well, you're not giving us any evidence. And they never have given any evidence. There's never been any at all. Zero evidence. Zero evidence of incompetence, zero evidence of any deliberate harm. That's why she didn't go, because there's nothing. And there's nothing to this day. She finishes off, Dr. Holt. Sorry I'm gabbling, but I'm trying to get it. I think my telephone's going to run out of space, as it were, for the hour. She goes, "From a personal point of view," Dr. Holt says, "it was the overall situation." Vague, weird, woolly language. "It was the number of unexplained incidents, well, only based unexplained on what Breary's saying is unexplained, that was such a concern. And there wasn't ever one individual case where I thought that needs referral," she added. So it's all contradictions. She's telling her friends, "Don't come here because we've got a murdering nurse here," in quotes. That's what she said. "Don't come here because we've got Lucy Letby here." But she's saying here there's not a single case that needs referral. In other words, there's not a single case that's got any evidence of deliberate harm, as the post-mortems found, as Dr. Jane Horden found, as another a second paediatric pathologist found, as a second neonatologist found. It's mad. So she's saying, it's kind of both saying, I should have reported it, but there was nothing to report. I should have reported, but there's nothing to report. But whereas Jairam gets in a very locked position where he says, in the Baby K case, well, it's emblazoned in my memory. I saw her virtually caught her virtually red-handed, attempting to murder a baby. He had that. He can't say there was nothing, but it still ends up with a conviction. That's how sick it is. That's how sick and evil it is. I'm glad I got to the end of that now. There's so much else going on. Not least, by a long way, is Lucy Letby's statement that's been printed, 2 pages of it. I don't know if it's the full statement that she made. Very powerful, very difficult to read, actually, very painful to read. Get a sense of what she was going through. You've got Catherine de Berger, the occupational health that helped Lucy and gave her advice about, in sort of a counselling way, about getting her feelings down on paper, which then the police steal from her house and turn against her and call it a confession. This is one of the most evil, sick, twisted, nasty, vile miscarriages of justice there's ever been, actually. It shows every element of this establishment, all the agencies involved to be utterly morally bankrupt, all these doctors to be morally bankrupt and cowards, to this police to be absolutely morally bankrupt, and the criminal justice system to be a basket case of absolute vicious nutters with no conscience whatsoever and no interest in any way whatsoever in justice or truth. It is going to be overturned. It's coming. It is absolutely coming. And then the Lucy Letby to build her life again, and then get to the truth of what happened for those parents in terms of what happened in this unit over those years, so they can get the truth as well and be relieved of the burden, the false story that their children were murdered or attacked. And so all that is coming, and it must be very difficult for them. But the truth is vital, is it not? And Lucy Letby will be freed, and it won't be very long now, I think. It's building up a real head of steam. There's a new Private Eye article out as well. Lots of other stuff. I'll leave it there. It's just coming up to an hour. Sorry if I've gabbled a bit, but I just wanted to get it all in and finish this section. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.